260 people died. She was a bartender and only here now to come to terms with the memories. Like hiding in a hole with a man until Hamas found them and killed him, escaping when the gunmen started arguing over whether to kill her, too.
This is where I laid down, yes. Here was the bar. Here was the stage. While I'm lying under the stage, I see that they're shooting at people to make sure they're all dead. So the body lying next to me, they shot him in the head. I took the blood and wiped it on my face, and I simply lay still like they were, to seem dead. And I waited for the army for about 2 hours under the stage, until about 1 p.m. or so. It all started at around 6:30 a.m.
Hyatt's ordeal ended when Israeli soldiers arrived several hours after the attack began. As the war between Israel and Hamas continues, she'll be one of many Israelis and Palestinians struggling to deal with the trauma.
I think that what the war has shown us for nearly 2 months now is that really Netanyahu has no strategy but remaining in power. It's been almost 2 months and Netanyahu has not truly outlined the day after in any substantial detail. The only thing that we see now is a prime minister who is keen on retaining his office as a premier. Beyond that, there is no vision, neither for Israel or for what will happen with the Palestinians.
מהבוקר מדינת ישראל נמצאת במלחמה.
What we have seen on October 7 is the exact result of Netanyahu's divide and rule strategy. What he was trying to do for 30 years now is basically to divide between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, between the Palestinian Authority and the PLO, and Hamas and other radical organizations, and effectively favoring the radical organization over the more moderate, in exact opposite to every other Israeli leaders, whether right-wing or left-wing. And Netanyahu has done that not in order to further Israel's security, but in order to further his own personal power.
אנשים אזרחים התנדבו כולם ובאו יחד איתנו לעשות את זה. תודה רבה. תודה רבה.
לא יכול להופיע בבית עדיין. איפה אתה? משפחת קרנאווי?
Israel has paid a very, very dear price for that on October 7. I don't think that any other achievement by Netanyahu, and there have been a couple, will rise up to that. Everything pales in comparison. So if Netanyahu doesn't make any remarkable move that he is positioned to make to further peace, I think that he will be remembered as the worst leader of Israel and possibly of the Jewish people. There is a possibility, a very, very slight possibility, that Netanyahu, because of his unique position, will actually be able to bring about an Israeli-Palestinian peace, as far-fetched as this sounds. If there will be an actual American pressure to move along those lines, Netanyahu is the one person who can actually deliver that in the Israeli public because of the wide support that he enjoys among right-wingers. But this is a highly unlikely scenario. A far more likely scenario is that Netanyahu's legacy would be that he has been the worst leader of the Jewish people and of Israel since basically time immemorial.
I think that Netanyahu should step down already. He's the one responsible for what's going on today, and the war is proceeding according to what they wanted to do. But I think it should be led by people who are not that involved with what happened in the catastrophe of October 7th.
I would like a new prime minister because I think there's been a lot of bad feelings generated, and I think it would do well to heal the country, and I think a fresh perspective is a good idea.
I think at this point, Netanyahu, while he's still sitting, he needs to, his focus needs to be winning the war. And it can't be upon whether I'm responsible for this or I'm responsible for the failures. Don't focus on the failures right now. Right now we're at war. We need to win this war. We need to go in and wipe out Hamas, wherever they're sitting. Next step, after the war is over, or at a stage in the war where things are less intense, at that point we're going to be able to look at things from a different perspective.
I think that this is the end of Netanyahu's career as a politician. Yeah, I don't think there's much room to re-elect him. I see Gantz as the next leader. Why? Okay, Netanyahu does represent a lot of things, including a stronger security footing, but it's just hard to build trust again in a government that failed like this.
In the depth and breadth of cooperation that we have had since the beginning of this war, a level of cooperation that is truly unprecedented in the history of the great alliance between our two nations. The fear and the panic of those little children.
I want the people of Israel, the people of the world, to know where the United States stands. I've had my great Secretary of State here. He's been here for a long time.
Now, what are those elements that attract people? I think first and foremost, the sense of victimhood. If you feel frustrated in life, if you feel like a victim, if you feel like the system is against you one way or another, then you look at Netanyahu and you see someone that you can identify with. Like yourself, Netanyahu too suffers from the system, from the judicial system, from the media, from people who don't like him from one reason or another. You are like Netanyahu. Only Netanyahu offers you something more. He's not just a martyr, he's a mighty martyr. He also offers you power, not just a sense of humiliation. I think there is a real possibility that Netanyahu will survive that. It's unlikely at the moment. The overwhelming majority of Israelis would like to see Netanyahu gone. However, certain things are working for him. First and foremost, of course, he is still the prime minister. He has the capacity to rule the agenda, not least the war agenda. Secondly, Netanyahu has a very strong coalition, 64 members of Knesset, all of them in one way or another terrified of another round of election. לחשוב על רגעים שבהם אנחנו מאבדים את המשמעות. כלומר, לחשוב על נקודה בחיים שבה...
לעשות לי פה סדר?
אמש אמרתי שכוחותינו יכולים להגיע לכל מקום ברצועת עזה. עכשיו הם מקטרים את ביתו של סינואר. אז ביתו איננו מבצרו, הוא יכול לברוח, אבל זה רק שאלה של זמן עד שנשיג אותו.
It's devastating what happened 2 days ago. It's devastating what's been happening since the 7th of October, but we had a glimmer of hope with the pause, with the release of hostages, with the liberation of Palestinian prisoners, and especially with the fact that because of no fighting, aid could go into Gaza. In the most immediate, we need to go back, they need to go back to that pause, humanitarian pause, ceasefire, call it as you want, so that the whole more positive processes can start again, including putting aid into Gaza to help people that are at risk of their lives. We have to go back to the peace process. The peace process has been neglected, almost ridiculed for so many years as something irrelevant. Well, everything that has happened in the last 6-7 weeks proves the point that that was a colossal mistake.
As the IDF expands its operations to dismantle Hamas in Gaza, we have not lost sight, not for one moment, of our critical mission to rescue our hostages, to do everything in our power to bring our hostages home. Our intelligence has been monitoring the situation of our hostages, and I can say with absolute certainty, every minute in Hamas captivity endangers their lives. This is an urgent call for action. The international community must take action. The Red Cross must have access to the hostages that are in the hands of Hamas. 138 hostages, children, women, men, the elderly, have been in Hamas captivity for over 60 days in brutal and inhumane conditions. Some of the hostages in Hamas captivity have chronic illness and life-threatening conditions. Some of the men and women in Hamas captivity were injured during the massacre of October 7th. Some have been harmed since. Every day, every hour, every minute is critical. The lives of our hostages are
الشقة الثانية لو حدا يطلع فوق لو حدا طلع فوق أحسن.
Desperate residents of Khan Yunis flee on foot. Carrying on Friday, they have pushed deep into the southern half. This house in Khan Yunis was struck overnight. Nisreen Abdulmoti lives next door with her daughter and 2-year-old baby. Medical officials in the enclave say Israel's bombing has killed more than 15,500.
Given the scale of the loss of human life in Gaza and in Israel in such a short amount of time, the Secretary General has today delivered a letter to the President of the Security Council invoking Article 99 of the Charter of the United Nations. This is the first time that Antonio Guterres has done this since he became Secretary General in 2017. Article 99 states, and I quote, that the Secretary General may bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter in his opinion that may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. In the letter, which has been shared with you, the Secretary General urges the members of the Security Council to press to avert a humanitarian catastrophe, and he appeals for a humanitarian ceasefire to be declared.
We are in the final moments of fine-tuning the language. We might be in a position to announce to you maybe before the end of the day of a step in that direction to be taken place before the end of this week. On top of the agenda is this war has to stop, a ceasefire has to take place, and it has to take place immediately.
The Secretary made very clear in a speech he gave several weeks ago in Tokyo, where he laid out the principles that the United States supports when it comes to the end of this conflict in Gaza. One of those principles was that there must be no reduction in the size of Gaza. And that remains our position, and it will remain our position. So if any proposed buffer zone was inside Gaza, that would be a violation of that principle, and it's something that we oppose. If it's with respect to something in Israeli territory, I won't speak to that. That's a decision for the Israelis to make. But we're very clear that when it comes to reduction in the size of Gaza, that's not something the United States supports. With that, we'll wrap for today.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Secretary made very clear in a speech he gave several weeks ago in Tokyo, where he laid out the principles that the United States supports when it comes to the end of this conflict in Gaza. One of those principles was that there must be no reduction in the size of Gaza. And that remains our position, and it will remain our position. So if any proposed buffer zone was inside Gaza, that would be a violation of that principle, and it's something that we oppose. If it's with respect to something in Israeli territory, I won't speak to that. That's a decision for the Israelis to make. But we're very clear that when it comes to reduction in the size of Gaza, that's not something the United States supports.
To crush Hamas, we will in parallel continue to facilitate humanitarian support for the people of Gaza, That is part of our credo, that is part of our strategic goal. Once again, we will do everything we can to keep Gazan civilians outside of the crossfire between the IDF and the terrorists, and we will do everything to facilitate that population receives water, medicine, food, shelter. So we have spoken that in the framework of the post-conflict relationships, Israel will have to have a security envelope. We can never again allow terrorists to cross the border and butcher our people the way they did on October 7th. And we can't take our eye off the ball. And so in a post-conflict reality, a post-Hamas reality, Israel will maintain for the foreseeable future overall security control. That will be a necessary prerequisite of any post-Hamas reality. Now, if you ask me about a buffer zone, let me be clear. You won't have a situation in the future where you can have Hamas terrorists on the border, directly on the border, positioned just to cross over and kill our people again. There will have to be security arrangements on the ground to prevent that from happening. That is not Israel taking territory from Gaza, on the contrary. That is creating security zones where you have a special situation on the ground which limits the ability of people to enter Israel to kill our people. It's common sense. The Israelis will never stand for a situation that they had until October 7th, where Hamas terrorists are directly on the border. I reject the comment that there aren't safer places in the Gaza Strip, precisely because we have specifically designated these places. The maps are there. People can see where they are and where people can go to. And once again, we've shared them with the humanitarian organizations precisely so they can beef up their effort to deal with the civilians who will relocate to these safer areas.
The activities are taking place mostly in the northern Gaza Strip, but also conducting precision strikes against specific targets of Hamas in the south. The mobilizations include over 400 targets that we've struck, engaged. Those targets include tunnel access points, they include command and control positions, they include the ability of Hamas to operate freely in the north as they did over the last week. We are conducting our operations simultaneously with a humanitarian effort that is ongoing, and indeed today, throughout the day, several trucks have come, tens of trucks have come in to Gaza after being security cleared on the Israeli side and through into Rafah. From our perspective, we understand that this is going to be a long war, a war that is not bound by time at this, as we see it. And indeed, the reality is one where Hamas have taken the last 16 years of their governance in order to build an extensive subterranean capability, an extensive rocket array, an extensive drone, explosive drone capability, and this is the enemy that we are facing. I would say in the north, the IDF is still meeting Hamas. There is a extensive subterranean capability that Hamas has developed over the years. They are coming out of tunnels, launching attacks against our forces. And indeed, there are areas that before the operational pause, we did not reach, we did not go to. So there are still areas that were basically untouched, perhaps except for specific airstrikes.